Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's lesson. In the previous lesson, we looked at Introduction to Video Editing Part 2. Today, we're going to start with Advanced Video Editing Skills Part 1, and we'll be looking at overlays, text, keyframing, and transitions. But I won't go fully into detail, just the surface level knowledge, and then we'll see how we can apply them in the project we started with in the previous lesson. Okay, so I have my CapCut opened here, and I'm going to open the project we worked on in the previous lesson, and then we continue from there. Okay, so this is the project we worked on in the previous lesson, and in the previous lesson we looked at how we could split and take out the unwanted parts of the video and make it more seamless without having a lot of distractions and interruptions in both the audio and the clips. So first thing we are going to look at is how to add text to your video. So there are multiple instances you'd want to add text to your video. It could be that maybe you want to add subtitles to your video, or you want to add maybe a title text to your video, or you want to add some key text to your video in areas like, let's say he hits on certain points and then you want to bring out text to represent those points. Okay, so look at a few of those, and then from there we'll take a look at overlays. So to add text in CapCut, first you need to open your project, or if you've not opened a project yet, or you've not worked on a previous project, you can create a new project and then import your video, and the video you want to put the text on or apply the text on, you just import that video and then put that video into your timeline. And then you come to the top left corner of your window, of your CapCut desktop window, and then you see this option text. So you click on it, and then once you click on it, you see this option default text. So you're going to use the default text option here. But if you don't want to use the default text option, there are multiple text effects and templates you can use. But since this is like a beginner friendly course, you're going to select the default text and then we'll continue from there. I'll select this add option here to add my default text. And on our timeline, you can see that it has added a default text clip in our timeline. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to edit this text. So the default text over here is like the default placeholder text, but you can change it later on, or you can change it to whatever you want to change it to. So I'm going to change this text to to change the text, you need to come to the top right corner here where you see this text box option. So in this area here, you can type in whatever you want to type, and then it will show in your preview window over here. So let's say I want to type the text my first project. You realize that whatever I'm typing in this text box shows in my preview window here. Okay, so let me click and drag this text box all the way down. Okay, so you have it over here. So you can decide to decrease the size a bit. So to decrease the size, you can either decrease it from the preview window, or you go to the options here to decrease or increase the font size. So if I move the slider to the right, it increases the font size. If I move it to the left, it decreases the font size. So I want this one to be small. I don't want it to be too visible because I don't want the viewer's attention to go on that part or on that text. So we just make it small. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to center this text. So I'll click and drag it and make sure it's aligned at the center. And one way to know that it's aligned at the center is if you see the blue line at the middle of your clip, or at the middle of the center of your preview window. So once you see the blue line, it means that it's at the center, and then you can release your mouse pointer or your touchpad or trackpad. Okay, so now we've learned how to add a default text to your video or to your clip. Okay, so now next thing I want to do is I want to let this text show on top of the entire clip. But if I play my video,
don't hate me, but picking your niche really isn't that complicated. You see that?
you realize that once this marker passes the end of this clip, it disappears. So I wanted to fill out the entire window to show on top of the entire video clip. So what I'll do is I'll come and highlight the right side of my text layer or my text clip, and then I'll click and drag to the end of my project clip or to the end of my project. So now if I slide through my timeline, you realize that our text is on top of our entire project. Okay. So that's the basic way of adding text to your video or to your project. Now, let's say you want to change the font size, or we've talked about the font size. Let's say you want to change the font type of your text. You click on the text clip here, and then we'll come to our right side, and then you see this option font. So by default, it's on system, but I can change it to whatever font you want to make it. So we'll click on this option here, and it will bring an entire window or a new dialog box where you can see multiple fonts. Some of these fonts are installed on your PC and some of them are cloud-based fonts. So you can select any of the fonts you want to use from here. So I'm going to use the Montserrat font. So I'll click on the search option here and then type Montserrat. Okay, so I'll select this font here. So you realize that it has affected the font type in our preview window. But once I change the font, you realize that it has shifted a bit to the right. But I want to make sure that our text is at the center. So click on it and bring it back to the center of our clip. Okay, so now we've changed the font type of the font type of our text, or of our default text. Okay, so now let's say you want to make this all caps, but I don't want to go and retype the entire thing in caps. What you can do is you can select this option here to change the casing of your text. So you can choose this to apply an all caps to the entire text, smaller caps to the entire text, or the default or sentence title case, or whatever you call it. Okay, so these are the three options. So let's make it all caps. Okay, let's make sure it's at the center. Okay, so this is fine. And if you scroll down, you see this preset styles. So these are basic or text effect templates inside of CapCut you can apply to your text. So when you watch these TikTok edits, you see some custom font designs or text effects. So those text effects are templates or presets inside of CapCut that you can apply to your text. CapCut is not like other softwares like After Effects and Premiere Pro, where you have to do most of the things manually. Here you have templates and presets to make your work much faster. But if you are working with a professional agency, mostly they'd want you to be creative and be unique. So to be unique, you'd have to do everything manually and use your own creative ideas. And once you keep scrolling down, you see scale, and then you see position, plane rotation, alignment, blend, stroke, background, glow. So let's add a background to our text. So we'll select this option here to enable the background for our text. And then you can see that now we have a background, but I want to make the background white, and then we'll make the text black. So we'll change the background color for the text here. we'll change it to white, or you can select this white option, white colored option here. And then we'll go back to the top. Then we'll change our font color to black. Okay. So now we have our text over here, our default text, or it's no longer default since we've made changes and adjustments to it. Okay. So this is the first step to add in a text, or this is the method of adding text inside of CapCut. Now, what if you want to add a subtitle, or you want to add subtitles to your video? So to do that, what you're going to do is you first select the clip you want to get the subtitles from, or you want CapCut to generate the subtitles from, and then you go to this option here that says captions, and then you select the spoken language. So the spoken language here is English. And then what you're going to do next is to generate. But here you can see that you have this purple diamond here, meaning that now you need to have a premium or a pro subscription in order to use this captions option or this subtitles option inside of CapCut. I think it used to be free, but now you have to pay to use it. But let's just use it and see. The reason why I'm able to use it is because I'm not exporting the video. I'm just working on the video inside the project window. But once you're trying to export the video, it will ask you to either pay to export your video, or you're just going to remove the effects, the premium effects you applied, and then you export your video. But I'm just doing this to show you how it works, or how you can add subtitles or captions to your video. Okay, now CapCut has automatically created our captions here. So once we play it,
Don't hate me, but picking your niche really isn't that complicated. You see, the main issue is that people constantly get stuck in something called the analysis paralysis, or what I like to call it, the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about this. Either you do trial and error, or you use logic to find a niche that is recession-proof at all times.
okay, so with this one, most of his words or most of his dialogue is clear to understand. Like, it's easy to generate captions from. But when, let's say, we have like locally made videos where you have slang words, and then you have some complicated names in other languages and all that, you need to go through all the captions to make sure those parts are typed out correctly, because sometimes it won't be able to spell out certain names correctly. So you have to make sure that you go through the captions to make sure that there are no spelling errors or typing mistakes. So you just correct all of them before you continue editing your video, because sometimes they might skip you. And most of the time, when you're watching videos made by beginners, you realize that sometimes most often the subtitles have some spelling errors in them or some grammatical errors in them. That's because when they just generate the subtitles, they just leave it at that, assuming that the software gets everything correctly. But even in most AI models, when you're using AI, they prompt you that they are just an AI model and they are not right all the time. So sometimes you need to do a cross check to make sure you have your facts in check. Okay, so once you go through each and every one of your captions and you realize that there are no spelling errors and all the names and all the text are typed out correctly, the next thing you want to do is you want to change or adjust the fonts or the typeface of your subtitles. So here I'm going to change the fonts to, let's see, let me choose Rubik. Okay. And then I'll choose all caps, increase my font size a bit. So once you do that, and once you're doing that, you want to make sure that it's applying to every part of the clip, so that it's not like, so that you won't end up editing only just one text clip. And make sure that when you're editing the font type of the captions, you select everything so that it applies to everything. Okay, so our font type runs through everything. And now I'm going to change the blend mode. This is not obligatory, it's not compulsory to do so, but this one is more like a personal preference. So I'll go to this option here. When I scroll down, you see blend. So I'm going to use this blend option here to edit my text or my subtitles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just reduce the opacity a bit. Personal preference, you don't have to do exactly everything I'm doing. I'm just doing it to show you how it works. Okay. And let me decrease the font size a bit. Okay. Okay, so now you've learned how to add a default text and how to add subtitles to your video or to your project. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to look at is overlays. So overlays, as the name already suggests, is just a clip that you put or a design element you put on top of your video. Okay, so there are multiple types of overlays. So you can have, for example, a logo as an overlay. So once you place a logo on top of your clip, it becomes an overlay. You can even describe this text box or this text as an overlay since it's on top of our main video. So we are going to see how we can add a logo on top of our video or add a logo to our video. Okay, before I continue with the overlays, let me just explain this simple detail inside of Photoshop. It's going to help us with our overlays in CapCut or in any other video editing software. So let's go to Photoshop. And then what I'm going to explain is, or what I'm going to talk about is what we call blend modes. And the most important blend modes we'll need to know when adding overlays are the multiply and the screen blend modes. So to find the blend mode option inside of Photoshop, you go to this option here under the layers panel. You go to where you see the text normal and then you click the arrow and then you see the multiple blend mode options we have. So the key ones we use in our overlays is the multiply blend mode and the screen blend mode. So most editing softwares have this blend mode option you can use. Okay, so let me explain the multiply. So multiply in design, when we use the multiply blend mode, what it does is it takes out all the bright colors inside of whatever you're applying the blend mode option to. So let me take this for example. I'm going to import an okay, let's take this for example. I'm going to import a logo into Photoshop. Okay, and then click the check mark. So what happens when I click or choose the multiply blend mode? What it does is it takes out the bright areas of the element I'm applying the blend modes to. So you realize that it has taken away the whites inside of our logo and then it has left only the darker areas. Now what happens when you use the screen? The screen blend mode option does the opposite. So let's choose screen. So what screen does is it takes away all the blacks, whilst the multiply takes away all the whites. I think that's much more easier to understand. So multiply takes away all the whites, screen takes away all the blacks. Okay, let's bring our other logo. Okay, so with this one, for instance, what you're going to do is you're going to apply the screen blend mode option. So come here and then select screen. So it has taken away all the blacks. So that's the knowledge, or this is the knowledge you're going to use when applying overlays to our video projects. Now let's go back to CapCut and then we're going to import our logo inside of our project file. So let's go back to the media panel here. And then we'll go to our project folder. And then we'll use this one, the white logo, click and drag it into your media panel. Okay, so now we have our logo here. We are going to bring this into our clip. So we'll click and drag it and make sure you place it on top of the topmost clip or layer in your timeline. Okay, so now we have it on top. Let's bring our play head here. And then we are going to reduce the size a bit and then place it at the top right corner of our video. So we use this, we'll bring our pointer over the circle dot at the corner, click and drag to reduce the size. And then we'll bring it to the top right. Okay, so now I want to take away the black. What we are going to do with the knowledge we took from Photoshop is you're going to change the blend mode of this to screen. So you're going to take away all the blacks. So go to our video properties panel over here, and then we'll scroll down so you see blend. Once you see blend, just click on the drop down and then you see mode. So this is also a blend mode option inside of CapCut, and it's on default. So you're going to change this default to screen. Okay, so realize that it has taken away all the blacks in our video. So most overlays, when you download them, most of them have a black background. So most often we just use screen to get rid of the blacks on that overlay, and then we'll leave whatever is left of that video. Okay, so now we're taking away the blacks from our logo, and it's just our logo left. And then to add some flair to it, we'll just reduce the opacity a bit. And that's it. We've added our logo. And we want to apply the logo as we did earlier to our default text. We want to apply it to the entire clip. So we'll select our white logo here. And then at the end of the clip, we'll click and drag so it fits or meets the end of our clip in our timeline. Okay, so now when we play it,
Picking your niche really isn't that
we have our logo,
complicated.
we have our subtitles, and then we have our default text.
Something called the analysis paralysis, or what I like to call it, the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about this. Either you do trial and error, or you use logic to find a niche that is recession proof at all times. Essentially,
okay, so now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add a different kind of overlay to our clip or to our project. So I'll go to my projects folder, and then you're going to apply this light leak overlay. So first thing, you're going to just import it into a media pool or a media panel here, and then we'll click and drag it on top. But most often we would want this to be below our text so it doesn't affect the color or the colors of our logo, our subtitles, and our default text. So what you're going to do is, after bringing the overlay to your timeline, what you're going to do is you're going to select all our text layer options, and then we'll click and drag it and place it on top of the overlay we imported earlier. So now we have our entire text on top of this video overlay, and then we are going to scale this out so it covers the entire video. So now we want to get rid of the blacks. So what are we going to use, or what option are we going to use? You're going to change the blend mode to screen so we get rid of all the blacks. So we'll go to our video panel, scroll down to the blend option. If this isn't showing, make sure you just click the drop down, and then we'll change this to screen. So now we've gotten rid of all the blacks, and it's left with just the light leak overlay.
and don't hate me, but picking your niche really isn't that complicated. You see, the main issue is that people constantly get stuck in something called the analysis paralysis, or what I like to call it, the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about this. Either you do trial and error, or you use logic to find a niche that is recession proof at all times. Essentially, you just really want to make sure that it.
Okay. And since this one is a beginner lesson, I don't want to be using templates for most of this stuff, so you understand how the software works first, or how to do the stuff manually first before you jump into the template. So at least when you're using the template, you understand whatever it is you're doing. So now when we go back to our video clip, you realize that it exceeds our project's main clip. So we are going to trim this to make sure it fits the length of all our other clips. So like in the previous lesson, I showed you how to do that. So to do that, we'll just come and drag our playhead to the end or where we want to cut the clip. And then once it's on at the end of the portion we want to cut, we'll just select our video overlay. And then since we don't want whatever is on the right side of it, we are just going to select this option here. So this will just delete whatever is on the right of our trim or of our split, sorry. Okay, so now it fits our entire clip or our entire project. Okay, so this is basically how to add overlays to your videos. So if you want to download external overlays, you can either go to Pixabay or you can go to YouTube. So on YouTube, you just search for overlays and you see multiple overlays there. And then you see which ones are not copyrighted, and then you download it from there. You bring it to your CapCut project, import it into your timeline, and then you just take away the blacks, because most often the backgrounds for those overlays are black. So you just take away the blacks with the screen blend mode, and then you continue from there. And if you realize that it's too intense, you can just reduce the opacity of that overlay, and then you continue with your project. Okay, so this is it for overlays. The next thing we're going to talk about is transitions. So in CapCut, there are multiple transition options you can choose from. So we'll look at a few of them and then we'll see if we can create a manual transition. And then we'll move to the last part of this lesson, which is keyframing. Okay, so now let's look at our transition presets. So to use the transitions, you go to this transitions options here at the top left. And then you see these multiple transitions. So if you want to see how the transition works, you just hover over them and then you see how they work. So you just, whilst hovering and then you realize maybe there's one particular one that you like, you just click the download button and then you click and drag it onto your clip or the clip you want to apply the transitions to. So mostly we apply transitions in between two clips to splitted clips. Okay, so let me demonstrate that. So let's say I want to apply this one. So first then I'll download it.
That complicated.
Then I'll click and drag it in between these two separated clips. And then once I play it,
don't hate me, but picking your niche really isn't that complicated. You see, the main issue is that people.
yeah, so that's it. That's how to add transitions. But if you realize that the transition is too long and you want it to be fast, you can just highlight or hover over the end of a transition option here, and then you can either decrease it to make the transition faster.
It really isn't that complicated. You see, the main.
Or you bring it out to make it
But picking your niche
slower.
really isn't that complicated. You see, the main issue is that.
Okay, so you can choose from the multiple options you have over here. So now what about if you want to add a manual transition, since most of them are paid for, and then let's say you're on a tight budget, so you can't use the premium options here. So there are multiple ways of doing it, but on CapCut is quite limited. But if you're working on softwares like DaVinci, Premiere Pro, After Effects, it's easier to create your own custom transitions without stress. So here I'll just show you one of the methods you can use that works in CapCut. So let's go to my project folder, and then you see this clip here. light leaks transition with sound. So I'll put all this into a folder which you can download and follow along. So I'm going to import this clip into my project. Sorry, let's go back to our media pool. Go back to our project folder, click and drag. Okay, so now we have this clip here. So let me play it and then you see what is inside of the clip. So these are light leak transitions or a light leak overlay clip. So this is what I'm going to apply to my footage to create my own custom clip. Okay, so now I'm going to click and drag this here. Since I don't want the transition to affect all these options here or all our text and then our video overlay here, I'm going to select everything below except my main clip and then click and drag it on top. Okay, so now we have our transition clip over here. So now let's preview it and see. Okay, so in this clip, you realize that there are two transitions inside of them. Okay, so let's just split the first one out since I don't need it. So just split it, then get rid of the part. Okay, let's preview.
I like to call it the information stage.
Okay, so there's another transition clip coming in, but we don't need all of that. So select and then I'll delete whatever is on the right. Okay, so now we have just this one. Let me play it.
Or what I like to call it the information stage. There really is a
Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to make sure that it's at the top of the center of these two clips. So let's say this is where I want to apply the transition. So I'll make sure that it's on top, directly on top of the two clips equally. Okay, I think this is fine.
or what I like to call it the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about this. Either
Okay, so in our transition clip, you realize that it has blacks which are covering our footage. So we'll just use the method we learned earlier, which is to apply a blend mode to get rid of the black. So we'll select our transition clip here, scroll down to under this option here, our video option here. And then we'll change the mode, our blend mode to screen. Then let's preview it, our video again.
the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about this. Either you do true
Okay.
analysis paralysis, or what I like to call it the information stage. There really is only two ways you could go about it.
Okay. So now this is one way or this one manual method of adding custom transitions to your
There really is only
clip.
two ways.
Okay, so now let's move on to the next thing, which are keyframes. So keyframes are one of the most important key elements or key skills inside of video editing. That's mostly what differentiates a professional from a beginner. Okay, so keyframes are specific markers on a timeline that dictate the starting, ending, or changing points of an object's properties. So that's basically what keyframes are, and I'm going to demonstrate how you can use keyframes inside of your project. Okay, so I'm going to create a new project. I don't want to use this one, else it will be too crowded and you might get lost. So I'll close this project. And like I said in the previous lesson, CapCut automatically saves your project to the cloud, so you don't have to press Ctrl S to save it. Okay, so I'll create a new project. Then we have our new project opened. So now what I'm going to do is I want to add a video, or let's say a solid color to our timeline so that I can use it to demonstrate how timelines work. So let's just add a text. Let's just add a text first. So I'll show you how to use keyframes. So I have my project window opened. I'm going to use this new project to demonstrate how keyframes work. So first thing first, I'm going to use the default text box to explain how keyframes work. So first I want to apply a position animation to our text here. So the animation I want to do is I want the text to come from the bottom all the way to the top. So first I'll place the text at the top where I want the animation to end, and then we'll come here to add a keyframe. So make sure you are not at the start of your timeline, you are somewhere at the center. Okay, so now that we've set our keyframe, or we've added our first keyframe, now we'll bring our marker to the left, and then we'll click and drag our text box all the way to the bottom outside of our canvas or outside of our preview window. And then when we play, you realize that our text comes all the way from the bottom to the center of our canvas. So that's basically how keyframes work. Okay, so let's say you wanted to go outside of your clip. So what you're going to do now is we'll bring it all the way to the right, and then we just click and drag this out of frame. And then when we play, it goes up. But let's say we want it to stay a bit at a center before it goes all the way up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this keyframe here. Then I'll copy, bring the marker to the right, and then I'll paste. And then I'll paste the keyframe. Okay, so let's preview it now. So now it goes from all the way from the bottom, which is this keyframe over here, to the center, which is this keyframe, the first keyframe we added, and then all the way to the top, which is the third keyframe we added. But we want the text to stay at the center a bit before it goes to the top. So what we are going to do is we are going to select this keyframe here, and then we'll press Ctrl C to copy it. We'll move our playhead a bit to the right, and then Ctrl V to paste. So let's preview our animation again. So it stays at the center before it goes. Now we want to bring out the keyframes. We want to stretch them out a bit so that the animation doesn't look too rigid and it looks smoother. So I'll bring this last keyframe all the way to the right, and then we'll bring this a bit to the right, and then we'll leave this here. Then we'll bring the keyframe which is at the left all the way to the left, and then let's preview our animation. Yeah, so that's basically how keyframes work. So now let's see if we can add another property to it. So let's say if it gets over here, I want it to rotate a bit. So what I'll do is let's come to this part of our clip, and then we'll go to our plane rotation. We'll add a keyframe, and then we'll move it a bit to the right, And then we can use this option to rotate our clip, or we can just come and use this option over here to rotate it. So I think something like this is fine. And then we'll click the keyframe here, our rotation keyframe, and bring it all the way to the right. Okay, so now let's play our clip. Okay, so realize that the start of our animation, the rotation is at 0, it's at 0 degrees, and once it goes to the next keyframe, it goes to negative 10.73 degrees. So that's basically what keyframes are all about. It's a powerful tool we use when we want to animate certain elements inside of our project. And this doesn't just apply to only text. It can apply to logos, videos, and basically any kind of elements you put inside of your timeline. So let's try something with a logo. So let's go to our project folder, and then let's try it on this logo over here. Sorry, let's go to our media pool first. Then click and drag our logo, and then we'll bring it to our timeline. Okay, so let's scale this out a bit. Okay, so this is what I want the final output to look like. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply an opacity animation and also a scale animation to this logo. So we'll click and drag our playhead somewhere at the middle, and then we're going to add a scale keyframe, and then we'll add an opacity keyframe. So let's add the scale keyframe. Okay, so we have scale here. We'll add a keyframe, and then we'll go down to blend, where we have opacity, and then we'll add another keyframe. Okay, so now let's move the playhead all the way to the left, and then we'll make the opacity 0. And then we'll go back to our scale, and then we'll reduce it a bit. Okay, so now let's play our video or animation. Okay, so realize that at the far left of, or at the start of our keyframe, our logo is scaled down, and then the opacity is at 0. But once it's on its way to the second keyframe, the opacity slowly increases to 100, and then the scale also slowly increases to our final keyframe we added. Yeah, so this is the basics of keyframes. So this is basically what keyframes are about, and basically this is how they work. Okay, so in our next lesson, we'll talk about match cuts, J cuts, L cuts, and also how to add sound effects to your projects, to your video editing projects. Okay, this is it for today's lesson. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.